Hello, it's Lynn Watts here with Wyatt the Wonder Dog. And today I want to talk about creating lessons on friendship and all of the uh, really infinite, maybe, skills that go into being a good friend, making friends, and that sort of thing. So, friendship was certainly a lesson that I did at least once, usually during the beginning of the year, and then again later to cover some of the dynamics of friendship that often come up throughout the school year. And certainly, um, some of the most frequent requests that I would get from students to help them with relationship issues involved friendship. Feeling left out, feeling like somebody wasn't being a good friend, not knowing how to make friends, all these kinds of things. So let's just talk about some of the basic topics I think that you need to cover, and then I'll share with you where you can find some lessons that will deal with each one of these different situations. So, I think one of the first things, of course, to talk about in terms of friendship are the characteristics of a good friend. And let me just kind of quickly list those. But what I think is there's some that perhaps we tend to um, really emphasize, probably because they're easier to describe. And maybe we tend to skip over some other aspects of being a good friend. And I think those are some of the more important ones that we're seeing a lot of problems with nowadays. So, kindness is one that I think is pretty obvious and I think is pretty easy to describe. But the next one is respect. And here's something that I'm not sure that I really talked about much in terms of friendship and the need to be respectful of friends. But that's certainly an important topic. Honesty, I think, is again a little more complicated than something like kindness, but it certainly plays a huge role in friendship. And, what exactly does it mean to be honest? When are you honest or need to be honest? Um, Fairness is one that I think probably comes up pretty often, feeling that things aren't fair, they're not equal, and kind of identifying what that should look like. And then here's one that I'm not sure that we talk about very much, but I think is really key, and that is loyalty. Um, you know, a friend is somebody who stands up for you, somebody who stands with you, even when things are hard or kind of difficult. And so the importance of that, and I think how important to establish that early on with children in the elementary years, so that when you get into the middle school years, where there is certainly a lot more, conflict and dynamics and maybe cliques involved, and to already understand what it means to be a good friend in all of these respects. All right. So some key social skills, and again, I think there's some of these that we focus on a lot. Uh, Active listening. I think we talk about listening, but I'm not sure we talk about active listening as much as we should. Meaning, not only do you hear what somebody's saying, but how do you respond? Conflict resolution. I think perhaps we spend a good bit of time with that, but honestly, I have come to see that really we need to teach kids not only how to resolve conflicts, but also how to disagree respectfully with other people, and that it's okay to disagree. Certainly something that is very important in friendships. Empathy is a word that is, talked about, and I think it's important to look at what that looks like and how you develop empathy. Assertive communication, in other words, helping kids feel solid and being able to stand up for themselves. And finally, self control. So here we get back to emotional regulation, being able to manage your own emotions, sometimes in difficult situations. So I think to kind of wrap up in terms of things to cover in lessons, three things I think are can be key issues for kids of this age. The first one being when to move on. All right. When should you decide that maybe this is not the best situation, not the best friends for whatever reason? How do you make that decision, and when should you move on? Secondly, what do you do when a friend wants you to do something unkind or against the rules? And of course, this is a place to talk about peer pressure. And then finally, I think an important one is what to do if a friend is bossy, is self-centered, or perhaps unkind. And to differentiate this, I think we've done, an excellent job talking about bullying, but not everything falls into the category of bullying. Sometimes there is just this conflict between personalities and a lack of understanding of each other. And so helping kids to recognize that and know what they can do if that's the case. So where can you find some lesson plans? I have included lesson plans on friendship in every lesson plan book I do, just to give you some ideas. In the Stories to Learn by lesson plan book, which covers all of the Wyatt books, there's one on what makes a good friend, all those characteristics and traits, and there's also one on conflict resolution. So that would be a good resource for you. Another one would be in my first lesson plan book. This one has lesson plan on qualities of friends, what makes a good friend, and conflict resolution is also included in here. There's one on listening skills in here. So that's a good resource for you as well. And finally, in my volume 2 of the lesson plan book, I have one on making friends with positive words. So all about communication and how to do that. I have one for tools for making and keeping friends. And finally, there's a lesson on empathy and emotional regulation. So lots of things that you can find in each one of these books to make some lessons on friendship, which I think is such an important skill, especially nowadays following the COVID shutdown, where loneliness is apparently an epidemic, along with so many other things, anxiety, depression, so on. So dealing with the topic of friendship, both in classroom lessons, in small groups, and also individually, I think is probably a key part of being an elementary school counselor. So as always, thanks for all the great work that you do with young kids, and thanks as always for listening.